Per 9000's game room.
I've talked a lot about Capcom, but well, back in the day, there was just certain companies you could rely on to always bring stuff to the home console market, and Capcom was one of these companies. I've been intending to do this review for a long time. I set the stage up by talking about both Final Fight and Street Fighter 2, because this game is kind of connected to both of them. But I also wanted to get another wrestling game or two done first for the sake of comparison. I've talked about Fire Pro and I also have reviewed some of the WWE games, so I figured I needed to review Saturday Night Slammasters, known in Japan as Muscle Bomber The Body Explosion. It was a pro wrestling arcade game made by Capcom to run on their CP arcade systems. As well as featuring some interesting connections to other Capcom games, it is cool to note that the game features character designs by manga artist Tetsuo Hara, who is most well known for his work on the animated classic Fist of the North Star, a film I love. Okay, so Slammasters plays like a traditional arcade wrestling game, and if you've played things like Wrestle War or 3 Count Bout, then you will be right at home with this. It also feels a little bit Street Fighter 2-ish, so if you've never played a wrestling game before but you like your Street Fighter games and you enjoy Capcom's work, then this is an excellent place for you to get into the world of wrestling video games. The game uses a 3-button configuration, with 1 button being used to grab, 1 to attack and a 3rd to jump, with the D-pad moving you around the ring. So it's all nice and simple, and there's really no real room for confusion. Each character has 2 special attacks and a finisher. When an opponent's life meter is depleted, he must either be pinned for a 3 count in classic WWE style or forced to submit. Defeating all of the other wrestlers results in winning the championship belt, but your game is not over then. No, you have to defend your belt against the whole roster. There are 2 game modes: single match, where the player fights in a series of one-on-one matches against computer-controlled opponents, and there is Team Battle Royale, where the player and another player, controlled by either another person or by the computer, competes in a series of 2-on-2 matches. The game can be played by up to 4 people utilising the Super Nintendo's multi-tap, which makes it a great game for any retro party situations. This is going to sound a little Street Fighter 2 like here. The game features 10 playable wrestlers, only 8 of which are selectable in the single match mode. The remaining 2, Jumbo and Scorpion, are non-playable bosses. They are, however, selectable in team battle mode. You know how you found it annoying in Street Fighter 2 when the names got all messed around and changed from the Japanese originals? Well, it's even worse here. In the English localization, Capcom changed the names of all the characters, pretty much, and even went so far as to modify their backstories. Here are the fighters with a quick bit about them and both of their names. There is Biff Slamkovich, aka Alexei Zalzov. This guy is the sort of main character. In the Japanese version of the game, Zalzov is a Russian wrestler who trained under Hagar alongside his rival Gunlock. They have a sort of Ryu and Ken style competitive relationship. In the English version though, the whole relationship situation is gone. But Biff does make a reference to his comrade Zangief when he loses. You have Gunlock, otherwise known as Lucky Colt. Well, in the Japanese version of the game, Colt's another apprentice of Hagar's, and as I've pointed out already, he's Zalzov's rival. The English version not only gets rid of this, but also goes on to suggest that Gunlock is related to Guile from Street Fighter 2. He does look like he could be related in all fairness, and Street Fighter the movie, the arcade game, even goes so far as to hammer this home and say that Gunlock is Guile's brother. I was kind of disappointed to learn that this was largely just some codswallop made up for the European market, as I really latched onto the idea of Guile having a kid brother who had decided to be a wrestler as opposed to following in his older brother's footsteps. Then you have Mike Hagar. Yep, Hagar from good old Final Fight. He's probably the reason this game exists, to be honest. I'd imagine the whole idea began with, oh, Hagar from Final Fight was supposed to be a wrestler. Let's make a game with him wrestling against a whole bunch of spandex wearing dudes. And if that's true, it's just one more reason to salute the mighty mayor of Metro City. The Japanese and English versions can't even agree about him though. The Japanese version says that Hagar's appearance in the game takes place before he was elected as the mayor in Final Fight, which would make this game set in Final Fight's past. A sort of body slamming prequel, if you will. The English version though decides to disagree with this, and refers to Haggart as being the former mayor of Metro City. His daughter Jessica, the one he was rescuing in Final Fight, sometimes enters the ring to celebrate with him when he wins a match. Age-wise, as far as I can see, they haven't even thrown us a bone here, as both of them look exactly like they do in Final Fight. This all really does leave me to wonder if they sat and decided what the story was going to be in each region, so that they could capitalise on the past games that have been popular in different places, or if they just throw stuff at someone who has some degree of literacy in both languages and go, here, whatever you can't understand or quite work out, just make something up and shove this in and fill the blanks. Then you have the Great Oni, aka Mysterious Budo, a Japanese wrestler who dresses with a kabuki theme. He's apparently a rival of El Stingray. It's been suggested that he is based on the real-life wrestler, the Great Muta. Personally, he is one of my least favourite and least used wrestlers in the game. I do know that they can't all be from other games or be someone's brother, but I just wish there was something a little more to him. He comes across as a weak character, sort of story-wise to me. Then you've got Titanic Tim, aka Titan the Great. He's a huge wrestler who uses his size and strength to great effect. Basically, he is one of the big, heavy enforcer type characters. His backstory is that he was once a tag team partner to Birdie from the Street Fighter series. For all intents and purposes, he looks like he's basically based on the wonderful Andre the Giant. Andre was a legend of the wrestling world, so I can't fault them for wanting to have a wrestler like him, and it beats most games going for an imitation Hulk Hogan. Then you have El Stingray, aka El Stinger, a Mexican luchador who is all based around pure speed and fancy techniques. People have argued about him being based on darn near every Mexican wrestler who ever wore a mask, and even some Japanese and American ones too. I personally really like masked wrestlers and people who throw themselves around in the air, so he's cool in my books. I suppose if this had come out nowadays, people would say, oh look, it's the Rey Mysterio one. Then you've got Alexander the Greater, aka Sheep the Royal, an Australian wrestler who is for all intents purposes basically supposed to be the resident nutcase. It is believed generally that he's based on Big Van Vader, and I can see that myself. The guy really does look like Vader. Then you've got King Rastamon, aka Missing IQ Gomes, a wild jungle-like man who acts like a beast in combat. He's always accompanied by his pet monkey, called Freak, who happens to be his manager. I guess Blanca was popular and they decided to go with the whole Wildman idea again, but didn't want to go and spray paint him green or mutate him. They wanted to keep him a bit more grounded in the world of wrestling. Then you've got Jumbo Flapjack, aka Kamala the Bouncer. He's a sub-boss and the right-hand man of the Scorpion. Basically, he looks and plays just like the famous WWE wrestler, the Earthquake John Tenta. And I can't say much more about him. He's a typical fat, slow but strong wrestler. And then you have the Scorpion, aka the Astro, the game's final boss and main antagonist of the series. The appearance of this character was inspired by the legendary Luchador. He looks like a guy wearing a motorbiking helmet in a wrestling ring, but he's a pretty cool character. He's enjoyable to use in the team battle mode, and it's said that he's possibly based on Tiger Mask or Black Scorpion. I think he's just a guy who wants to get away with wearing a bike rider's helmet inside the ring. I have to admit to loving this game, even though hardly anyone I ever talk to seems to know about it. It's like Street Fighter 2 and Final Fight's long forgotten cousin. It did have an update and a sequel, if my memory serves me right, but they never made it to the SNES, and the series pretty much died out after that point. The graphics and sound are both very Street Fighter Final Fight based, so if you like those, you'll like what is on display here. I think it's arcadey enough to attract the attention of people who wouldn't normally go for wrestling games, which is a plus point for it. I did believe that it was a USA and Japan only release at first, as I've had my American cart since I was a kid and none of my friends ever owned it, and I'd never actually seen a UK version on a store shelf. I believed this till about 2 months before I wrote this review, because then I saw a copy of the game cartridge in a retro store for £20. In very rough condition, but it looked very genuine. This was enough to not only make me boot this up then, but also to make me go online and look into where it was released. The only UK copy of it I could find online at the time was 32 quid. And that was bidding, and it had a day and a half left to go. Even if it came out in England, there's not exactly a wealth of copies out there, and there doesn't seem to be that many import ones too. Okay, so to rate this game, I'd give it a nice solid 8 out of 10. It plays well, it's interesting, it links to other games. It's just a shame that it seems like it's a bit of a pain to get hold of. Okay, that's Kerr9000 signing out, saying keep on gaming.